Hi, I'm Debbie Georgatos. Thanks so much for tuning in to my show, America Can We Talk? Today we're going to hit three stories. One, U.S.-Mexico trade deal enrages the left. Number two, IRS is going to pay $2 million to True the Vote. Huge story. Third, social justice warriors bring justice to Oberlin. And I'll tell you why these stories matter to you. Stay tuned.
Debbie Georgatos, host of America Can We Talk, is an author, attorney, and political analyst whose mission is to inspire the American political conversation about preserving liberty in the best country on earth.
And hello again, and thanks again so very much for tuning in to my show, America Can We Talk? I'm Debbie Georgatos. So we talked last week about how the Democrats in the U.S. House, and this is my first five for today. I'm really going to try to stay within five. We'll see how we do. But the Democrats in the U.S. Congress were just outraged over the idea, complaining about the idea that President Trump basically said, if Mexico does not start helping us enforce the border, if Mexico doesn't help us in stopping these caravans who are coming up from the southern border of Mexico and up to the U.S. border, that President Trump was going to impose tariffs. They were supposed to start today, Monday. The tariffs were going to be gradually rising in percentage, 5% each time, so starting at 5%, raised at 10% the first of each month until they got up to 25%. A lot of complaints, frankly, from Republicans too, but Democrats basically saying that you can't do that with the tariffs. You can't impose tariffs to punish Mexico for never helping. In fact, they seem to be aiding and abetting these caravans, these refugee caravans that are flooding the U.S. southern border. Well, President Trump reached a deal with Mexico. It was a deal announced by the U.S. and Mexico, a joint declaration by the State Department and Mexico late Friday, basically saying Mexico will take unprecedented steps to help America secure the border. They ran through three commitments they will do at least, and in turn, America will not impose the tariffs that were to have started today. Part of the deal says in 90 days, we look at the situation again. Is Mexico actually doing what they said they would do? Mexico committed to using more of their own forces to patrol earlier or deeper into Mexico, so you stop the caravans from coming here. They committed to take strong measures inside Mexico, sending their own National Guard, particularly at the border. They agreed to increase actions to dismantle human trafficking operations that smuggle individuals, and to take extra steps to coordinate with the American government to share information and better protect and secure a common border. The deal with Mexico also strengthens the RIM policy, Remain in Mexico, the policy President Trump put in place that basically says all these caravans coming up from the southern border, through our southern border, when they're seeking asylum, as they're claiming asylum, they have to remain in Mexico while we figure out if they meet our asylum standards. Many people have complained about the RIM policy. It's so cruel, making them stay in Mexico as though they somehow have an inherent right to come here. But you would think the Democrats would be saying, wow, great, we're not going to impose tariffs. Our whole issue is solved because President Trump is not going to impose tariffs. But that's not what the Democrats are saying. Even though Trump struck this deal, it gets Mexico on board with the idea that we have to actually have them help us secure our southern border. Mexico have to stop enabling these refugee caravans from coming up through their southern border, coming through their country and presenting themselves at America's southern border. But the Democrats were in fact livid, issued a bunch of statements, and Nancy Pelosi being among the nastiest, of course. She described President Trump's trade, his kind of discussion back and forth with trade and tariffs with Mexico as President Trump having a temper tantrum, and that it was embarrassing that President Trump is having a temper tantrum. Let me put this in context for you. Just last month, 144,000 people crossing our southern border illegally were apprehended. Keep in mind, that's a Border Patrol number. Keep in mind, many experts say we only catch 1 in 10 or so who actually cross our border because we have an insecure border, because because we don't have a wall. We don't have enough people working the border. So 144,000 caught just last month entering America illegally. And think with the Democrats, you have those kind of numbers. Now, number one, Pelosi continually says there is no crisis at the southern border. It doesn't matter how many videos come out, how many numbers come out. There is no crisis. This is my fingers stuck in her ears saying, la, 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 I don't see a crisis, and there is. But let me tell you what else the Democrats are doing. They will not fund. President Trump asked for $2.9 billion to help to build extra shelters along our southern border for the people coming into America who are seeking asylum, the people with children. Asked them for emergency funding. Trump asked Congress, $2.9 billion. They won't budge. No way, will not help. Number two, the Democrats will not give Trump enough money to fund the wall, as was used to be the kind of common understanding. Everyone knew we had to have a wall in some places. No way. Number three, Democrats in Congress continue to say no to funding for the hiring of more Border Patrol agents. Trump also recently asked Congress for more money to hire more Border Patrol agents to secure the border. Democrats won't do that. The one thing Democrats did do, by the way, is pass a bill in the Democrat majority U.S. House that essentially is trying to help the Dreamers, give them, number one, a legal status, number two, a path to citizenship. Passing that law at this time is an engraved invitation. It's the moral equivalent of an engraved invitation to more people in Central America, South America, Mexico to come up through our southern border. It is a signal from the Democrat Party. Don't worry. Come on in. We're going to make you all legal. You'll eventually have access to all of our welfare programs, all of our government assistance, all of our free education and health care and housing and foods, and we're going to make sure you get to vote. The Democrats passing that Dreamer bill at this time, given the situation on the southern border, is a flat-out invitation to more border crossers. So Nancy Pelosi having a fit. There was one little statement that Beto O'Rourke, also one of the Democrat candidates for president, also attacked the Trump's deal he made with Mexico to stave off the tariffs, Mexico agreeing to be more cooperative in trying to preserve our southern border. O'Rourke, in a completely, I mean, the guy is not even dealing in reality, not even dealing in facts. O'Rourke's tweet was, the damage of Trump's reckless trade policies and tariffs has already been done. What we see is yet another example of him trying to be both the arsonist, Beto calling Trump an arsonist, the arsonist who created the problem in the first place, and the firefighter who wants credit for addressing it. He's blaming Trump for the astonishing, insecure southern border when it's Beto O'Rourke's party that will do nothing to secure the border. It was under the 8 years under President Obama where the problems at our southern border exploded because we had the message sent to caravans, to people in Honduras, in other places in Central America, come on up, America's borders open, they never secured, everyone can come, everyone's going to get in, they're going to give you a free ride. That was the message from the Democrat Party for 8 years, which is indeed what led to our current crisis at the southern border. Trump didn't create it. Trump's solving the problem created by the Democrats. Last thing, a little bit of entertainment on this point. President Trump, in tweeting about this, in announcing that he was going to strike a deal with Mexico and essentially say, if you'll help us with this border security thing, we can hold off on the tariffs. And Trump tweeted out, travesty that's taking place in allowing millions of people to easily meander through their country. Speaking of Mexico, meander through their country and invade the U.S., not to mention the drugs and human trafficking pouring in through Mexico. Are the drug lords, cartels, and coyotes really running Mexico? We will soon find out. And this is Trump egging the government of Mexico, just saying, well, if you're really in charge of your own country, time to stop this mess, time to stop it. So Trump, you can't, no matter what he does, it will be the most horrible thing ever that the Democrats, how they will characterize what he's doing. So they complain when he did want to put tariffs on Mexico, now that he's solved it and we're not going to put tariffs on, that's bad too. But I got to tell you, folks, when you choose a president of the United States in the factual context where we are today in 2019, and that president actually takes strong steps take strong steps to secure the southern border. He is doing the primary job of the United States of America president, of having a sovereign nation with secure borders. And frankly, I think the Democrats, they are counting on a wide swath of American voters who are duped by the stupid lines they throw out. And one more thing on Pelosi, she threw out some line about, how dare Trump do this temper tantrum negotiation when we're really willing to work in a bipartisan manner to come forward with common solutions to deal with the border. I mean, she has these lines she's said for decades now in Congress, claiming when she has when she is indeed the Speaker of the House and she's in a position of power, claiming we're seeking bipartisan solutions. They have not sought any bipartisan solutions with President Trump on anything, and they don't mean it. So what the Democrats count on is people who are illegally in America being able to vote. They count on people who are duped into thinking that somehow Trump caused the problem at the border instead of the problem being having been caused by their own policies. And the people duped by the humanitarian argument that, America is so rich, why can't we just let them all in? We're going to get anyone who wants to come on, folks. We're talking in the world in the billions of people who would come to America if they could. So this is a central issue in the 2020 elections. Are you going to listen to the blather out of the Nancy Pelosi, Beto O'Rourke, and other leftists, or recognize that we finally have a president taking charge of the southern border and claiming that we get to secure our border, we get to enforce our border because we are, after all, indeed, a sovereign nation. And that today, my friends, is today's First Five. Okay, I want to turn and talk about this settlement that occurred, and it deals, if I had to have a theme for today's show, a theme for America Can We Talk today, it would be something like, you have to fight in this modern world. It is an era, it is a time that calls for patriots to stand up and fight on all sorts of issues, because the leftists who are currently in charge of the Democrat Party, the leftists in this country are radical, they are driven, they are extreme, they are lawless, they want power more than they want anything else in the world. It's why they don't secure the southern border, why they do everything to enable a weakened border, why they do everything to send the signal, don't worry, if you come here, we'll make you legal, we'll give you free everything. This is a party so driven for power, so driven to achieve power in this country that they have dropped all notions of morality, standard, principles, values, and law. They simply want power. And so the theme of today is you must learn that, discern that, and then be willing to fight. Now I want to turn and talk to you about the second story for today, which has to do with a group called True the Vote. They are based here in Texas. In fact, the founder of it, Catherine Engelbrecht, is a just amazing woman. She founded True the Vote years ago in order to essentially call attention to the cheating going on in the voting booth. And she really had only recently become involved in politics. She actually worked in an election as and I don't know if she's a poll watcher, an election judge, something, but one of the volunteer positions that she served in Texas, and she just saw rampant cheating. She was astonished at what she saw. So she founded an organization called True the Vote. And the basic idea was to call attention to cheating, to advocate for changes in law that would make the voting booth the sacrosanct place it's supposed to be, where only citizens can vote, where you have to have adequate identification to prove you are the person on that list, and that you only vote once. All these basic things which shouldn't even be questions in today's world. So she founded True the Vote. Well, this was under the Obama administration, and the Obama administration, as you likely know, weaponized the Internal Revenue Service along with other federal agencies, weaponized the IRS against his political enemies. And True the Vote was a huge example. Of course, the IRS also targeted Tea Party groups that were organizing to get people inspired to reclaim our country, demand we follow the Constitution, demand we have sovereignty. They were pushing back against socialized medicine. They were in favor of free markets. Just conservative activists, and these Tea Party groups were targeted by the IRS in a variety of ways. But I want to stick with True the Vote story today and tell you what this just tremendous outcome that took. It's a great example of my theme for today. To win, you have to be able to fight. You have to understand you will get injured along the way. You will be attacked, ridiculed, maligned. So Catherine Engelbrecht, she founded True the Vote. It's a nonpartisan group. It's a conservative election integrity group. They had nearly a decade-long battle with the IRS. Let me just tell you what happened to her, though, after she began her True the Vote organization. And she talks about, she and her husband owned a business. As I say, they were here in Texas. They owned a business. But because she got active and formed True the Vote, and they began to get national attention, people started to realize they were collecting stories of voter fraud, stories of times when election judges were not following procedures, where it's clear people were being permitted to vote that they shouldn't be. And this irritated the Obama administration, the idea that a citizen would dare to stand up, would dare to call them out and say we have to follow the law. So Catherine Engelbrecht, True the Vote, she and her family, and she and her husband at the time had a business, and the following organizations came after them, all under the Obama administration, all Obama administrative agencies: the IRS, the Department of Justice, the FBI, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives, ATF, and the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA. The federal government used all those agencies, weaponized those agencies against Catherine and her husband and their business. Their mission was clearly to destroy her, to shut her down, to send a signal to any other groups who dare to speak up in this country, who dare to challenge the powers that be, who dare to challenge the leftist agenda in this country. The attacks on her were not just to destroy her and silence her. They were a signal to people around this country. Understand, when leftists are in power in this country, as Obama and his team were, they will stop at nothing to destroy you. You will shut up. That was their basic: you will shut up, you will stand down, you will not challenge us, otherwise we will destroy you. So Catherine Engelbrecht, I'm nearly positive she lost her business. The business has folded. True the Vote was pretty quiet last several years. They've done some things, but they've not been as active as they have been. But she went ahead and filed a lawsuit. She sued the IRS for the conduct they engaged in attacking her. And when the IRS, you think, well, if you paid your taxes, if you followed tax law and you paid your taxes, what are you worried about? Let them review your books. What do you care? But it's not like that with an IRS audit. When the IRS is auditing you this year, many previous years, your business, many previous years, probably auditing True the Vote and their tax records, their conduct, there is not an IRS agent alive who could not find a violation in anyone's taxes in this country. If they decide they're going to get you, they can get you. It doesn't matter how honest you've been and how square and what a square shooter and how you really even made all your decisions on the safe side in your tax, in how you characterize things as taxes and what you file, what you claim. It doesn't matter. If the IRS wants to get you, they will. That is a statement as sure as the sun is hot. They can get you. So the IRS came after her, and she actually, this tremendous and heartfelt, she testified in Congress. She tried to tell Congress what they had done to her. So she's been very brave, and there are like 3 or 4 points that you just got to understand about how severely she was attacked and what it takes in today's time to stand up. So Catherine Engelbrecht, number 1, filed this lawsuit. And actually, I will tell you something interesting. You may know the name Andrew Breitbart. The Breitbart News, all the different Breitbart websites. Well, Andrew Breitbart passed away at a very young age in 2012. So he was a force for conservatism. His big thing, he had many big things, but one of his big points over and over was, you have to fight this leftism we are watching take over our country. We are watching what Obama did in his first term. The first chance he had with a Democrat Congress, a Democrat House and Senate, and a Democrat White House, he took over the healthcare system of this country. He socialized medicine in this country. This is what leftists do. If they have the power, they seize it, they use it, they never delay, they never wait. So anyway, so Obama's done all this to this country in the first 4 years. Andrew Breitbart is talking about how the leftists operate, and he's urging people, you have to be citizen journalists. You have to be recording things yourself. You have to be putting your story up. When you see these things happen, record them, tell the story, put it up on Facebook, put it up on your website, wherever you have it, put it up, share the story, tell the story. So anyway, Andrew Breitbart actually called Catherine Engelbrecht in 2012. She talked about how she wanted to dedicate this victory over the IRS to Andrew Breitbart because he called her basically when the news was first breaking about the IRS malfeasance against her and against other conservatives, and kind of gave her, hang in there, you gotta fight, you can do this, you gotta fight. So here's how this decision came out, and I want to tell you, there are a lot of things about this that matter. She didn't sue for damages. When you stop and think about that, people usually sue, and the claim is, well, you're just trying to get rich off this. You're suing for money. She didn't sue for damages. She's just asking for attorney's fees because she spent nearly $2 million on attorneys trying to clear her name and defend herself against this onslaught by the Obama administration. So she, Catherine Engelbrecht, got a ruling from U.S. District Court Judge Reggie Walton in favor of True the Vote and penalizing the IRS for, and so they punished the IRS. They actually came in 2018 to a consent order. And that just means they all agreed they were going to sign on something as a correct recitation of facts. They all agreed they were going to sign on. So the IRS, Engelbrecht, and the judge all agreeing, yeah, we're going to sign on and agree in this consent decree that these were the facts that are relevant. So they did that. They signed that in 2018. That 2018 consent decree included an IRS admission of wrongdoing practically before the ink was dry. After signing that consent decree, the IRS again began attacking Catherine Engelbrecht. I mean, they signed on saying, yeah, we shouldn't have done that, blah, blah, blah. And then almost immediately after signing it, because they were cornered, there's no defense. There's no defense in law, in fairness, in logic to what the IRS did to Catherine Engelbrecht. But because so they had nowhere to go. They had to sign this consent decree. However, the reason, but what happened after they signed it was they turned, in her words, turned right back around, filed a scathing 23-page retort, an argument, a comeback against what they had just signed, using quotes like, her case made no material difference in the real world. Did everything they could to they did everything they could to drag it out for another year and a half. So they're dragging out this consent decree, which they signed, and now they don't really want the consequences of it. And finally, this federal court judge has had enough. So when Catherine Engelbrecht, filed for attorney's fees, explaining that she's paid all this money defending her family, her name, her business from the IRS, she ended up having this judge issue what, and I've got to find the right language for it, but this judge said that the conduct by the IRS was so egregious that it warranted maximum attorney fees due. The judge said the IRS should pay the maximum possible attorney's fees against the IRS, and in favor pay that money to Catherine Engelbrecht, and who founded this True the Vote thing. He actually talked about, in addition to the requested attorney's fees, a judge said that True the Vote is entitled to a bad faith enhancement. Bad faith on the part of the IRS enhancement on top of the requested attorney's fees that Engelbrecht put in. He actually said the judge said, clear and convincing evidence necessary for a finding of bad faith on the part of the IRS. He found that they're still working out the exact amount. It's going to be in the range of $1.9 or $2 million. And Catherine Engelbrecht has been, in the course of this, lost her business. She has been destroyed financially. She obviously, the common Joe does not have $2 million lying around to pay attorneys fees. So she's been, digging in, borrowing, doing whatever she had to do, and actually getting attorneys to work for her without being paid, because to press the case, they had to do that. There's no other way they could push this case forward. And she actually talked about Catherine Engelbrecht talked about how even after the Obama administration admitted wrongdoing, they admitted they targeted her, they admitted everything they had to admit. She talks about the administration, so they did all that. The administration changed, so now we have the Trump administration, we have the Department of Justice under Trump, so you'd think, okay, sanity might be returning to the Department of Justice, but she's saying no. No, the Department of Justice doubled down, even though the attorneys, this is attorneys for the IRS and the Department of Justice, should now be under Trump control. They should be the Trump team, but they've doubled down, attacking her. And I mean, even after the consent decree was signed, which was, of course, during the era of Trump being president, they have this consent decree, and still the DOJ and the IRS filled with Obama holdovers, filled with the attitude of the ruling leftist elite class that says, we get to tell people whether or not they can speak up. We get to shut down. We get to use the power of the federal government to shut down political opposition. That mindset still lives and breathes inside the Department of Justice and the IRS, even though the presidency changed, because even though the presidency changed, we have President Trump, we have in the higher ranks of the Department of Justice and the IRS the same holdover Obama-era leftist, militant, power-grabbing, intolerant, citizen-shaming people working in those agencies still going after American citizens. You would think that once Trump won, and Trump is now in charge of the IRS, Department of Justice, that you would have heard a different tone, but you didn't at all. Even after they signed the consent decree, they still went after her, all those agencies. And one last thing about Catherine Engelbert, she said, at its core, this whole case is about control through fear. They, the Obama people, the IRS, Department of Justice, wanted to silence us, so they overwhelmed us on all sides. It was a multi-front war we were facing. It was designed to make us go away, to scare us, to break us, to try to turn public opinion against us. The coordination was through all facets. It was just mind-blowing. And she ends up talking about what she hopes is a lesson for people in this country today, that the left is, my words, not hers, the left is vicious, they are relentless, they will work as hard as they can to shut down all opposition, and you have to stay in the fight. She could have surrendered dozens of times over, said, okay, fine, what do I have to pay to make this go away? What do I have to do just to make you leave me alone? But she wouldn't do it. She stood up and fought, and this is the spirit that is needed in this country today on many, many fronts, because I've been talking about the Obama administration and the IRS and the Department of Justice, but the same mindset lives and breathes in the left-wing mindset in so many other places in American society, in American institutions and colleges. That same mindset that says, we are the law. We will tell you what you're allowed to do and not do, and say and not say. We will shut you down. We will use the tremendous force of the federal government to impose our will on you, and you, the people, just need to be quiet and take it. And this is a good moment to give a tease for tomorrow's show. I'm going to do a very deep dive tomorrow night into the Spygate, Muellergate, Pfizergate, whatever you want to call this story. I'm going to do a very substantive update tomorrow, what we now know has happened, what the stories have come out, what's pending, because a lot has happened on that story. But that story has the same theme as this story. People who push for power and want power more than they want law, more than they want principle, more than they know what's right about right and wrong. They want power. They will do anything. What happened inside the FBI against President Trump, this true concocting of the entire Trump-Russia collusion story, was an effort to choose the next president, to shut down the voters in this country, and then after the election happened, an effort to remove the duly elected president. It's not even enough to call it a hoax. A hoax is too cute a word. It was a coup attempt. And we are finding more and more every day about that. And tomorrow I'm going to talk about that story, because I have to tell you how people acted inside the FBI, Department of Justice, how they've acted throughout the time, even after President Trump won, and when we had a Republican majority House, asking for documents, trying to get to the bottom of it, calling hearings. The attitude you saw from the left, and it continues to this day, is we don't have to cooperate with you. We don't have to tell you. We don't have to follow the rules. We don't have to follow the law. we do what we want. And you're still seeing that attitude inside the Department of Justice and the FBI, this notion of above the law and we don't have to cooperate with you. And there have been many times along the way, in fact, we talked about a few weeks ago that Geraldo Rivera, others have said, why doesn't Trump just strike a deal if they decide that Congress won't go after Barr, Attorney General Barr, for anything, well, he hasn't done anything wrong, but they can make up stuff, and in turn, the whole Trump administration will drop this investigation into how the whole Trump-Russia collusion hoax got started. Trump's not buying that. And I don't think anyone now on the right is urging him to do that, because what occurred was so egregious, so country-changing, so country-destroying, destroying the rule of law, that there has to be tenacity in pushing it. But I do urge you to think about the idea that it was just a very few people in Congress who stayed strong fighting. There were plenty of people in Congress on our side of the aisle, on the Republican side of the aisle, that sat on their hands and said, well, you know, I don't really want to get involved. Let's just sit back. Maybe who did not fight. This is not a time for the weak-kneed, jelly-spined person to be in charge of anything in Washington. There is a need for strong, just insistent, unrelenting demand for facts and truth, regardless of where it takes them. And this is really, in wrapping up for Catherine Engelbrecht, well, she decided, you know, whatever it's going to take, she's going to do it. She is going to stay in this fight. And tomorrow we do this update on the Spygate. A little bit ties into the Catherine Engelbrecht story, which I will get to tomorrow. But that, my friends, is the end of Catherine Engelbrecht's story for today. Yay for the good guys. Yay for finally getting a judge to speak truth about the horrific conduct engaged in by the Obama administration and the IRS under the Obama administration. Great to have a small degree of justice done by the courts. So it's a great outcome, really, for truth and for just the idea that we have a rule of law in America and everybody has to follow it. And the final story for today, I want to turn to and just talk about this case involving Oberlin College. And this a little bit ties into the Harvard story I told you a few weeks ago, and I hope I get time to hit the Harvard story. But Oberlin College, the most amazing story. And again, the theme of the day, you have to fight for what's right. You have to stay in the fight. You have to stand up, because the left in this country, the social justice warriors, the left-wing, power-grabbing, socialist-loving American left is truly on a warpath to silence Americans and to have control of our culture, our society, our conversation, and our courts. In Oberlin College, here's a story, before I get to this litigation that came out very favorably against Oberlin College and in favor of a little local bakery. So Oberlin College, I had to look it up. They are in Oberlin, Ohio. It is actually the oldest continuously operating co-ed college in America. Did not know that. Second oldest in the world. So it's been around a long time. But the day after President Trump won the election in November 2016, 3 Oberlin students went to a local business, a business near the campus, frequented often by Oberlin College students. It's called Oberlin. It's called Gibson's Bakery and Market. It's in downtown Oberlin. It has a bakery and, you know, baked goods. It also has a market, and they sell, you know, various items. So the day after Trump won, 3 students from Oberlin, a guy and 2 women, went into Gibson's Bakery and Market, and the guy attempted to shoplift some wine. He tried to steal some wine and walk out. Whoever was working at the store that day caught him, and in trying to stop him from leaving with this wine, there's a bit of an altercation. The 2 women got involved in the fight, trying to help the guy steal the wine, and ultimately the police came. The guy was stopped, the police came, and all 3 of these students pled guilty to shoplifting, aggravated trespassing, and all of them in the plea deal acknowledged that Gibson's Bakery was not engaged in racial profiling. You see, these 3 students happened to be African American. But in between the plea deal I just told you and the day of this attempted shoplifting, these students went back to Oberlin College, and they engaged in you can't even call it political. They engaged in a monstrous strategy to destroy Gibson's Bakery for having the audacity to hold them accountable for the fact they tried to shoplift wine, to call the police and have them arrested. So these people started at Oberlin College. They went and got one of the student senate, I think it was, to put a statement out all over campus that Gibson's Bakery and Market was guilty of racial discrimination, had a long history of racial profiling, and should be boycotted. And so the student senate, I don't even know what they thought really happened, but these 3 students managed to convince the student senate to go on a rampage against this Gibson's Bakery. By the way, Gibson's Bakery, also a long time. It is now, it's the 4th generation of the family, of the Gibson family. This is a business that has supported the Gibson family since, I think it was like 1885 or something. So there's a grandfather, a father, an adult son, and a grandson. So I mean, all these people work at Gibson's. It's been their family's livelihood for generations. So this Gibson's Bakery is now, being maligned by Oberlin. And then they had, so these students, in addition to having the student senate pass a resolution, they engaged in boycotting and marching outside of this Gibson's Bakery, getting college students to show up and march outside carrying signs, boycott Gibson's Bakery, racial profiling, long history of racial profiling, racist, all this absurdity, and all of it stemming from this one incident in which these 3 college students engaged in stealing wine and thought they should just be able to get away with it. So at these protests outside of Gibson's Bakery, they had, in addition to the students who, were plenty of students, there was also a woman, an Oberlin faculty person. Her name is Meredith Raimondo, Raimondo, Meredith Raimondo, and she is the vice president and dean of students at Oberlin College. So finally, the Gibson's Bakery, they're being driven out of business by this completely unfounded protest. They filed a lawsuit, Gibson's Bakery did, against Oberlin College, including against this one particular member of the administration, Meredith Raimondo, vice president and dean of students. So they filed the lawsuit in November of 2017. And so you might wonder, well, why is it really her fault? These kids are in a protest. But she was encouraging them, helping them. In fact, she put out a statement just saying that she worked to ensure the students' freedom of speech was protected and that the student demonstrations were safe and lawful. I mean, she's agitating for, encouraging this protest built on a farce, built on a lie that somehow Gibson's was guilty of racial discrimination because they wouldn't let these 3 students shoplift wine. So Raimondo's right in the middle of it. She's stirring up. She's showing up at the protest outside the store, passing out flyers to people in the street saying, don't shop here. It's really bad. They're racist, racial profiling, blah, 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 blah. So this Meredith Raimondo, she got, the college decided, they agreed ahead of time that any liability against her would be paid by Oberlin College. So they're protecting her. She's saying, look, I'm just trying to help them learn about free speech and peaceful demonstration, blah, blah. She also was involved on the activity on campus, not just permitting students to pass around. She was agitating and encouraging students to be part. She considers herself a social justice warrior, and she has this narrative. You have a social justice warrior, plaintiffs. You have these 3 young students, and they happen to be African American, and they probably were being racial profiled. They could have been racially profiled, and they shouldn't be picked on. And so she was willing to go with a narrative instead of the truth. So what happened was the jury finally came back and they awarded Gibson's Bakery $11 million. $11 million against Oberlin College. And there were awards to each particular plaintiff because there was, a woman and her husband who were the owners of this bakery and other people who were owners there. It was an $11 million verdict. And basically the jury just said, you got to be kidding me. What in the world were you thinking backing this student protest? And so there are a couple of important facts to understand about how this case went. So they present this case. There was actually, I'll tell you one other amazing fact, and I'm going to guess it swayed the jury. There was a professor at Oberlin. He was a professor of music and theater or something. And he was actually retired, but he still was in the Oberlin community. His name is Roger Copeland, a retired Oberlin College professor. He wrote a letter to the editor in the local newspaper prior to the case being decided, while the case was pending, basically saying, Oberlin's nuts. What is wrong with them? Why are they defending this woman? There's no basis for this social justice warrior, racial profiling, racist accusation against this little bakery. The other thing they did, by the way, that the Oberlin College originally ceased, they refused to do business with Gibson's Bakery. They had previously ordered a lot of their items to be sold or provided in the college cafeteria. They cut that out, and then they reinstated it, and then they cut it out again when the bakery filed a lawsuit. So this guy writes this column saying, this Oberlin professor saying, Oberlin has no legs to stand on here. This is really, really crazy. But so this letter to the editor came to the attention of this Raimundo woman, who's the social justice warrior, advocating and pushing these kids to continue their conduct. And so she sent a text to co-workers about that letter to the editor and her statement about this Oberlin professor. In this text that went to many coworkers and made its way to the jury, she texted the real F word, I won't say it on air, F him. I'd say unleash the students if I wasn't convinced this needs to be put behind us. She did not care what the facts were. And let me just say 2 or 3 other things about this quickly. Okay, so Raimundo is a social justice warrior, uninterested in facts. She's got black students who she's claiming were wronged, so no other facts matter. It doesn't matter if they really tried to steal. It doesn't matter if they engage in a scuffle against Gibson's, against the people who are trying to stop them from running out from the store and stealing wine. The facts don't matter. All that mattered to her, social justice warrior and dean at Oberlin, was this social justice, who are our victims, this perpetual outrage, this perpetual accusation of racism goes against anyone who won't do what they want. Where was the rest of the college administration? Where was the president of the college? Where were the board of trustees? Where are the other administrators? Where was the faculty? Where is anyone at Oberlin saying to her, what are you doing? What needs to happen is you got to pull these 3 kids in here and say, hey, we really hope you don't get sent to jail, but you don't get to steal wine, and there's nothing wrong with the store, Gibson's, having you arrested when you do things like that. This is what would happen in a sane world. In the insane world that is Oberlin College, and frankly, sadly, hundreds of colleges in this country, nobody said a word, apparently. At least you can find. No one said, hey, these kids are out of line, Dean Raimundo. I'm not sure you ought to be defending them. So anyway, so they got this judgment. And the last thing I'll tell you about this story is because tomorrow is the judgment. Tomorrow is the hearing. They're starting a hearing on punitive damages. The $11 million was actual damages. They are punitive damages. A jury can come back with 3 times as much as the original award. So they're starting a hearing tomorrow on the question of punitive damages. So you think that Oberlin would be appropriately muted and careful? No way. They sent a letter out to the campus. Oberlin sent it to their own campus, a statement by the school that said, we are disappointed with the verdict. We regret the jury did not agree with the clear evidence our team presented. She talked about Oberlin didn't really defame a business, and they never endorsed statements made by others, and the college can't be held liable for the independent actions of their students. Institutions of higher education are obligated to protect freedom of speech on their campuses and respect their students' decision to peacefully exercise their First Amendment rights. They're still defending themselves. They're still defending Raimundo. And so I hope that this letter from Oberlin, I'm going to guess it will, this letter from the Oberlin school, statement to their community, their donors, makes its way to the jury room when they're deciding punitive damages, because Oberlin still doesn't get it. Oberlin did not issue a statement in any way denouncing the students who engaged in an attempted shoplifting and then in a physical altercation with the store owners. They don't denounce that. They don't acknowledge that Raimundo got in the middle of it all, agitating, passing out flyers, encouraging these kids to act as though they had anything legitimate to complain about. They are digging in, defending the idea that this bakery deserved to be driven out of business because they dared defend themselves against shoplifters. And I'm telling you, folks, my theme for the day, I will come back with an update about that when we find out what the jury decides about punitive damages. And the Harvard allusion I made just a few weeks ago, we talked about the Harvard case about the professor who was being shunned by a black law professor at Harvard, being shunned by the students because he dared to take on representation, join the team representing one of the Me Too, Harvey Weinstein cases. He agreed to serve as a co-counsel, and these students, not having any comprehension what the law, the idea of representation in this country and the importance of having an attorney representing even the guilty, even the accused, they succeeded in driving him out. Harvard didn't fire him, but they removed him as dean of students or some dean of a house that he was head of, because the students are running this institution. The students are running Oberlin. The students are running Harvard. Last thing, I got to do these really, really fast. I have why these stories matter to you. Today's stories matter to you because the tariffs, border security is critical. Americans are, to everyone except for the Americans who are not. Border security matters except to the people living in the swamp. The U.S. House and Senate don't do a darn thing. They're defiantly unresponsive to the people's concern about the border. Go Trump for doing it, for putting these tariffs in place. He got Mexico's attention, produced new Mexican commitments, and they're not burdensome. They're reasonable. The idea that Mexico is going to whine about these commitments, they got to do something or they're going to end up with the tariffs. Next slide, please. Trump tariffs. Heartland America is cheering Trump on, and I cannot believe the Democrats can't see this. I cannot believe they can't figure out Democrats are cheering them on. The ruling class in this country complains, but what's really their problem is the Chamber of Commerce campaign donations are at risk, and frankly, more for Republicans than Democrats. That's why the Republicans don't help in this issue either. Trump is standing up for the people, not, certainly not the Republican Party, but for the people of America. On this True the Vote verdict, Obama's actions represented a part of his fundamental transformation of America, which, when I say that, I mean using the power of the federal government to shut down political opposition. This is what leftists do. The True the Vote verdict is a significant step rebuking this un-American weaponizing of the government. We have also the True the Vote verdict, why it matters to you. Obama weaponized every agency of the federal government against his political opposition. I read you the laundry list, attacked just this one woman. The IRS behavior and OSHA and others toward True the Vote was egregious and transparently driven by political animus against political opponents. The Oberlin verdict, a defining marker for turning away from mob rule. This was mob rule happening in Oberlin, and Raimondo was the head of it. Stirring rebuke to craven, cowardly academia. Just like at Harvard, they surrendered to the students. Facts and truth still exist. They have to matter. They are critical to actually having a justice system. Final slide. To take action against a Harvard professor, drive him away from his dean of students job, whatever it was. He was a house dad living in a house. For representing an unappealing client is to ignore and debase the rule of law. Harvard had a great teaching opportunity there at Harvard just to tell students this is what the rule of law means. This is what representation means to the accused. Sometimes lawyers have to take on the case of the person who is guilty, who did something wrong. And that is a vital role to maintain our criminal justice system. It's vital to have lawyers representing even the truly correctly accused, those who did wrongdoing, because that's how we keep our justice entire system following the rule of law, making sure the prosecutor steps through the right hoops, doesn't overcharge, jury doesn't overstep bounds. These are protections that protect every single American. And Harvard just blew it on that teaching opportunity for their students. I'm Debbie Georgatos. This is America Can We Talk. So grateful you've tuned in. Talk to you tomorrow, 3 p.m. Central Time. And until then, speak up for America, because America matters.
Can you hear us now?
America Can We Talk? Truth about America.
Can you hear